Always awesome to see you guys. My name is Mike Bro. In case we haven't met, I'm one of the teaching pastors here, and so grateful to be with you guys. Thanks. I want to welcome those of you that might be at our Canyon Country campus, those of you who might be outside or in a family room, or maybe you're joining us online as well, somewhere in the world. Glad that you're with us as well this weekend. I heard about a pediatrician who was trying to examine a little 4-year-old boy. He was trying to keep things light and stuff because the kid was kind of freaking out, and so he took his, ear examiner thing, and he stuck it up there. He goes, "Now let me see, is Mickey Mouse in there?" And the little boy went, "No." He checks. I want to check your mouth now. He goes, "Is Olaf in there?" He goes, "No." He goes, he took his stethoscope, so I want to check your heart. "Is Spider-Man in there?" The little boy said, "No, silly. Jesus is in my heart. Spider-Man's on my underwear." Now, I may or may not be wearing Spider-Man underwear right now. I'm not going to say. But what I will say is that it took me quite a while before I ever allowed Jesus into my heart, into my life. I really didn't know him. And I kind of grew up as a kid at church. But when I was 17, I let him come into my life. And I started studying the life of Jesus for the first time in my life. I mean, really. I started reading like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the first 4 books of the New Testament of the Bible, that talk all about what Jesus did, where he went, and what he said. And, I was blown away. He blew away all my misperceptions about what God was like. And I just remember as a teenage guy going, that is like the coolest guy I've ever read about in my life. And he is. There's nobody like him. That's why, probably over 25 years ago, my kids were little. And I was just sensing as a young dad to kind of get my life in more of a laser focus. And so a buddy of mine said, "Bro, have you ever written down a life mission statement?" I said, "No, I've never done that." He goes, "Pretty cool exercise. Think about, just put it in one sentence, what you want your life to be like, and just go after that." And so I said, "Oh, I'll give it a shot." So I sat down, I remember, with a spiral notebook, and I thought, and I prayed, and I thought, and I prayed, and this is the simple, memorable statement I came up with as my life mission statement over 25 years ago. I just wrote, "I want to love and look and live like Jesus." That's all I want to do. Now, I got a long way to go, but I got to tell you guys, that is a worthy pursuit. Because if you really want to touch the lives of other people with your life, if you want to leave a lasting legacy, there is no one that you could pattern your life after. You could have no better role model than Jesus Christ, because nobody has ever done it better. Now, when you look at the life of Jesus, and I really hope you continue to do that, one of the things you're going to notice about Jesus is that everything about him was countercultural, counterintuitive, upside down, a little bit backwards, like everything. Just think about the day that we're going to celebrate next week. We call it Good Friday. You know what happened on that Friday? Come on, Good Friday? It's like you go on this disastrous date and you say good night when nothing was good about that night, right? It's when your team loses in March Madness. You don't want to hear good game. It wasn't a good game. They don't sing one shining moment for an air ball. Good game. It's kind of like good kale or good cat. I'm sorry. But come on, that dark day that Jesus was crucified, Good Friday? How backwards is that? But that's kind of how it was with Jesus all along. Just a little bit backwards. Starting with the place he was born. Not quite what you'd expect for the all-powerful creator God of the universe to make his entrance to this planet as a helpless baby. And no state-of-the-art birthing suite, born in a stable, laid in an animal feed trough, surrounded by cow poop. And he grows up not in a big city like Jerusalem or Rome or Athens, but in an obscure little hick town called Nazareth. Spends most of his days framing houses and pounding nails with his dad. And it's kind of ironic that he would work with his hands in wood and then die with his hands in wood. Just so backwards. And think about the people that Jesus would choose to be like world changers. They weren't exactly lottery picks. You would think that the people he would choose to start this incredible worldwide movement of hope and good news would be the best of the best. Like, awesome resumes and 4.0 GPA and high SAT scores, super talented and good looking, right? But the ones he chose were this ragtag bunch of unschooled, ordinary guys who were slow to catch on. They were hot-headed, they were impulsive, they were prideful, they fought all the time about who was the best and who was the most important. In fact, a couple of them, grown men, even had their mommy come and talk to Jesus about them sitting next to him. And when the heat was on, they all ran. They all denied him. Come on, who chooses a crew like this? That's so backwards. And the things that Jesus did, think about this. You would think that a quote-unquote conservative holy man would turn wine into water, right? We need to take this party down a notch. But he turned water into wine so the host of the party would not be embarrassed. He fed 5,000 people with like a Lunchable. He even picked up a little kid one time and told everybody in the crowd, you'll never see the kingdom of heaven unless you become like this guy, this little guy. Jesus walked into the temple of God one day, and he saw poor people being ripped off in the name of his Father, and his nostrils began to flare over the injustice, over the hypocrisy of it all, and he turned their tables literally upside down and turned their religious world upside down. On the night before he was crucified, talk about upside down. Jesus, the most powerful man in that upper room, he flips the script and he gets down on his knees and starts washing his disciples' feet like a slave. Even washes the feet of a guy named Judas, who would later betray him. And he tells them, listen, guys, the way up is down. You want to become great? You got to serve. Talk about backwards. He gave living water to thirsty people he wasn't even supposed to be talking to. He confounded the intellectuals with his simplicity. He touched lepers who were seen as absolutely untouchable. He gave hope to the hopeless. He gave life to people who were supposed to be dead. And that's why after only 3 brief years of ministry on this earth, we're still talking about him. Even that is pretty backwards. Let me show you a little acrostic that just might help you think about the backward way of Jesus. Let's just start with M, and let's just say, more is less, because Jesus is always talking like that. More is less and less is more. Don't ever let a lot of stuff, don't ever let it steal your heart. O would stand for others first. He would say, in fact, if you think you're last, you're going to be first. And if you think you're first, well, spoiler alert, you're going to go last. D would stand for dying is living. If you want to save your life, Jesus said, you got to lose it. You got to give it away, because actually giving is actually gaining. In fact, your motto ought to be, it's not about me. Jesus said, if somebody strikes you on one cheek, offer the other as well. Somebody asks you to go 1 mile, well, go 2. He says, you've heard it said, love your neighbor, but I tell you, love your enemy, because love is not love unless it's inclusive love. Jesus was known for hanging out with what they called notorious sinners, going out of his way to reclaim stories and restore dignity and worth and bring hope to those who thought they were unlovable. And K, he was a king on a cross, a king that would lay down his life for others. So let's look at an acrostic. Let's just put the acrostic up there. Let's say this out loud. Ready? Here we go. Modnik. All right? Well, let's just flip it around and see what it says. Modnik is the backwards kingdom of God. And that last one, king on a cross, man, how upside down and backwards is that? Just the opposite of what people were expecting. On this weekend, over 2,000 years ago now, adoring crowds cheered the arrival of Jesus into Jerusalem. They were expecting this political revolutionary, and Jesus shows up as the Prince of Peace. They chanted, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest, please save us, is what it means. Please save us from the tyranny of Rome. They were anticipating this mighty conqueror riding in on a great white stallion, and here comes this humble king riding in on a small brown donkey. So backwards. The first time we see him on Good Friday, it's actually like in the middle of the night. And he's in an olive grove in a place called Gethsemane. And he is under the greatest stress that a human being can experience. In fact, it says that he's like sweating droplets of blood because the capillaries are bursting from the intense strain. It says that his soul is absolutely crushed. And he's just praying with all he's got, just asking God, please change the plan. You ever been there? So is Jesus. But you know what is like crazy backwards to me? As soon as he decides to submit to God's plan and says, but your will be done, not mine, he then shifts the focus of his prayer, takes it off of his own pain, and starts praying for other people. I mean, who does that? You can read this beautiful prayers in John chapter 17. You ought to read it sometime. He prays for his disciples. He prays that they would be one, that they would be unified. Then you know who he prays for? You and me. He prays for us, for the ones that would believe because of these disciples. So here's this guy about to go through betrayal and flogging and humiliation and this excruciating death, and he knows it. And he's still got you and me on his mind. That is so selflessly upside down and backwards. And it also makes me think that maybe when I'm really hurting, I ought to shift the focus off of me and onto other people. And maybe that might ease my own pain. In that same olive grove, they come to arrest Jesus, and Judas, the guy who was one of his closest friends, been a follower for 3 years, comes in the dark and he leans in and gives Jesus a kiss on the cheek as a signal to the soldiers. This is the man that you're supposed to arrest. You talk about messed up. That is so backwards. And then Jesus stands before the Roman governor, Pilate, who is this coward who's addicted to political approval ratings, and he didn't want to stir up trouble, so he sends Jesus to King Herod, who really just wants to watch Jesus do a few magic tricks, which Jesus refuses to do. That frustrates him, so he sends him back to Pilate. And since neither can find any fault in him, obviously, you know what they do? They have him beat up, an innocent man. So backwards. And then Pilate, he gives the people a choice. Who do you want to release on this festival day? You want to release this no good, radical, dangerous, bad man, criminal named Barabbas? Or do you want me to release you this totally innocent, good man named Jesus? And guess what the people did? Yeah, they got it backwards. Instead of shouting Jesus' name, they began shouting, give us Barabbas, give us Barabbas. And they set a convicted felon free. And then Pilate just shakes his head and washes his hands of the whole deal, and he points the finger of responsibility on the people, and the people yell this back to Pilate about Jesus and say, well, we can deal with it. Let his blood be on us and on our children. We will own the guilt of not setting this man free. But gang, they got it so backwards, because it would be his blood that would be on them and set their children and them free from their guilt. And so they take Jesus away, and Pilate has his back ripped open with a whip made of leather and lead and little bone fragments. I mean, skilled soldiers in that day were said to be able to take a man within an inch of his life and leave him still breathing. You might have seen this scene in the movie The Passion of the Christ. It is so brutal. And then it says this in Matthew chapter 27. Some of the governor's soldiers took Jesus into their headquarters and called out the entire regiment. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. They wove thorn branches into a crown, and they jammed it on his head. And they placed a reed stick in his right hand as a scepter. Then they knelt before him in mockery and taunted, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spit on him. And they grabbed the stick and they struck him on the head with it. And when they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him again, and they led him away to be crucified. So backwards. They give him a heavy crossbeam that he's got to carry across his raw and bleeding shoulders, and as he carried it through the streets of Jerusalem. The very same adoring Palm Sunday, Hosanna in the highest crowd, turn on him. And they mock and they spit and they punch and they curse all the way up a hill to a place called Golgotha. So backwards. And it's there they put this innocent man on a cross between two criminals with a sign above his head that says, "Hail, King of the Jews." They're trying to be sarcastic, trying to be ironic, but they got it so backwards, because this wasn't the King of the Jews. This was the King of Kings. And his feet that traveled miles bringing hope and healing to thousands of broken people, those feet were nailed to that wood so that his knees would be bent at a 45-degree angle, and the only way to get a breath was to push up on his feet for air. I mean, most people in crucifixion died from suffocation because they were unable to push up any longer. Catch this. The Creator who breathed life into the nostrils of mankind was running out of breath himself. That is so backwards. It's on this cross in this moment, just before he's to take his final breath, we get to hear some of Jesus' last words. And they are what you might expect. To the soldiers that were killing him, spitting on him, mocking him, beating him, Jesus says this, "Father, forgive them. Just forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Talk about backwards. To the criminal that's on a cross next to Jesus, in his final moments, this guy, he humbles himself. And he asks Jesus to save him and forgive him. And Jesus answered him and said, "Truly I tell you today, this moment, you're going to be with me in paradise. Your life may not have been well lived, but in this moment, your faith and your humility and my grace are coming together, and this will make it an amazing day in eternity for you." So backwards. And I'm not sure where you're at today, but you need to know that no matter what you've done in your life, this is the radical, unexpected, upside down, backwards, amazing grace of God. And it's for you too. As he hung on that cross with you and me on his mind, it says that Jesus cried out. He screamed. Only time that word's used in the New Testament. He screamed out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And in this moment, we see what I think is probably the most painful moment of all. He was fully taking on the sin of the world, and it made him completely separated for the first time from his Father, and his heart is breaking. And he cries out. And I'm so grateful for this moment for a couple of reasons. One is because Jesus gives us permission to cry out too, to wonder out loud in the middle of our pain, my God, where are you?" Because a lot of times when we're in pain, we want to isolate ourselves and just run away from God. But Jesus gets honest, and he cries out in a raw, gut-level prayer. He turns toward the Father and not away from him, which leaves me thinking maybe we ought to do the same. And I'm also super grateful because in this moment of Jesus' separation from the presence of the Father, it gives us unlimited access to the presence of the Father. It's so backwards. And then Jesus pushed up enough to cry out, "It's finished." The word used for finish is the word tetelestai. It's a Greek word that literally means paid in full. The sin debt has been paid in full. And it says when that happened, the curtain of the temple, the curtain that separated the people and the priests from the presence of God, was torn in two from the top to the bottom, removing division between God and man once and for all. Jesus' separation from the Father brought us into his presence forever. And now nothing can separate us from the love of God. So why is Good Friday so good? Because it's so backwards.
Good Friday. How can one describe such a day? The wrongdoing of all humanity putting to an end an innocent man, the Son of God. This is the story of Jesus' death by way of a cross, all in one moment bringing death to the bright light of our future. He never stopped loving us, and yet this is the incredible part of it. Our sin stopped his heart. Our sin drove the nails firmly in the hands of God. All along, these were the plans. We told ourselves that we were in control, and this was deemed sufficient for all of us. The brutal beating, the inhuman flogging, the naked humiliation. Heaven watched and saw it all. Our rebellion, our guilt, our shame, erasing the very notion of reconciling us with God, our sin and our debt, overcoming Jesus. Here is our King, obliterated. The enemy laughing, his plans unstoppable. There's no longer the sound of freedom rising. Now God's people are utterly broken. Behold the chains of mortality. Yes, this is what is true. We had heard the stories of old. The lost are found, the blind can see, the weak are made strong. But now we are witnesses to this reality. God is dead. We'd almost believed there is a way of redemption, there is a life of fulfillment, there is a peace beyond understanding. Now we know better. For us, we can say that God is encapsulated in this one realization. The single greatest sacrifice in human history is finished. How clearly we can see it. So what's so good about Good Friday? Just one thing, that the blood of Jesus can reverse the curse of sin and raise the dead to life. How clearly we can see it is finished. The single greatest sacrifice in human history, encapsulated in this one realization. We can say that God is for us. Now we know better. There is a peace beyond understanding. There is a life of fulfillment. There is a way of redemption. We had almost believed God is dead, but now we are witnesses to this reality. The weak are made strong. The blind can see. The lost are found. We had heard the stories of old. Yes, this is what is true. The chains of mortality utterly broken. Behold, freedom rising. Now God's people are unstoppable. There's no longer the sound of the enemy laughing. His plans obliterated. Here is our King, Jesus, overcoming our sin and our debt, reconciling us with God, erasing the very notion of our rebellion, our guilt, our shame. Heaven watched and saw it all, the naked humiliation, the inhuman flogging, the brutal beating, and this was deemed sufficient for all of us. We told ourselves that we were in control. All along, these were the plans firmly in the hands of God. Our sin drove the nails, our sin stopped his heart, and yet this is the incredible part of it. He never stopped loving us. The bright light of our future all in one moment, bringing death to death by way of a cross. This is the story of Jesus, the Son of God, an innocent man putting to an end the wrongdoing of all humanity. How can one describe such a day? Good Friday.
You know, that is so incredibly backwards. In every other major world religion, it's all about man trying to find his way to God. But here we see God come down and become man. When sin was at its worst, grace was at its best. When darkness tried to reign, light was at its absolute brightest. An innocent man was arrested so mankind could go free. He was chained so that ours could be broken. He was mocked so that we could be affirmed. He was wounded so that we could be healed. He was crushed so that we could be restored. He was separated so we would never have to be. And in that moment, he cried out, "It is finished." That became our new beginning. Check out this backwards reality. It says, "You know the generous grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty he could make you rich." And the final words of Jesus on the cross were, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And maybe you're to the point in your life where you're ready to say the same thing. Maybe right now in this moment you're ready to say, "Into your hands, God, I commit my life. Take my life, my future, my present, my past. I give you my doubts. I give you my addictions. I give you my fears. I give you my sin. Just make me brand new." I want to challenge you today to surrender your life to the love of the one who went to the cross for you. Accept this sacrifice for your eternity. As you can tell, we're going to do baptism today. And a baptism itself is just, it's so backward. I mean, you got to surrender to win. You got to humble yourself to be exalted. You have to trust so that you can walk by faith. You have to die so you can really live. And some of you may have come prepared to do that today. It's been a cool weekend. Since Thursday night, we've already baptized 36 people. We're excited about what's going on. And most of those people have been people like you that were just sitting there and they go, "I didn't come ready to do this today, but I'm ready to do this today. I need to do this today." And so people have just been getting up out of their seat and coming down and getting in the pool and surrendering their life to the one who loves them with this radical, amazing grace. So I want to challenge you to do the same. We're going to have to multitask a little bit here. We're going to sing. The band's going to lead us in worship. We're going to celebrate. We're going to clap when people come out of the water. And we're going to do all kinds of stuff at the same time. And as we're doing that, if you want to give your life to Christ today and start a new life by being baptized, you just come down. I would love to meet you there in the pool and just baptize you into Jesus Christ today. You might say, "Well, you know what? I don't know, because I didn't bring anything. I don't have like a change of clothes. We got these sweet T-shirts you can take home with you." You say, "I don't have a towel." We got towels. Y'all don't have a hair dryer. Not getting sympathy from me on that one. Just come on, man. Just come on. This could be a cool day for you. So I'm going to invite you right now to stand up, and we're going to sing. As we're singing, you just make your way down, line up, and get in the pool. I'll meet you down here.